a lot of other things you could be doing, but I appreciate the ability for me to and our listeners to learn from you.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Like we talked off air, the Utah to Iowa transition. You spent 4 seasons at Utah before coming back home to Iowa. What was it like out there professionally and personally? And what are the biggest lessons from Utah that directly show up to how you're running life and living things in Iowa now?
Yeah, I mean, Utah was great, and then I was at Utah State for 3 years prior to that. So we actually lived in Utah for 7 years. Personally, Utah's a great place to live. I mean, especially if you're an outdoors person, all the national parks and just being able to go into the mountains, disappear, camping. I actually had a side-by-side, so we did a little riding in the mountains too. Yeah. And so that was a lot of fun. Community-wise, it was really, really good, really family-oriented. The state's really family-oriented. So that was a good time for us out there in Utah. And then obviously the staff I was with them at Utah State and at Utah. Very family-oriented staff. So we did a lot of things together. So that was really good. I mean, professionally, I was the director at Omaha before I went to Utah State, and then at Utah State I was the director as well. And then just going from there to Utah State, just the size of our staff, my staff was just much bigger. So kind of learning how to develop a staff and kind of work with a bigger staff and have that type of group to handle sports and manage and all that kind of stuff. That was probably the biggest thing there. And then going from Utah State to Utah, then I was basketball only. So within that, just the intimacy you now gain with just working with one sport. And I think that was great. And it is great because you can just do so many more things, and you can really, all your checks and balances with each individual guy is there's less things fall through the cracks that way. And then that was kind of my first experience with a sports performance team as well. So myself, athletic training, nutrition, sports psychology, sports science, all working together, towards a greater performance goal with our guys. That was really my first experience where it was more organized, and so I learned a lot that way too. Just what everybody's doing, how they view certain things, how they view specific KPIs, and what each area values, and how we can integrate that all together. That was probably the biggest thing at Utah.
So many things for me to unpack, even just hearing you say that. Like the things I wrote down, like Omaha, like that looks like that's anybody listening, if you're not familiar with the area, that is seems like an amazing area to live in. In the state of Utah, I've said to my wife before, that time zone, it seems to be the best. Like you could go watch an NFL game on Monday night and it's on at like 6:00.
It's the best. I always said that to everybody. It's like when sports game or like any type of game, football, basketball, whatever, it was the best time zone because you caught the East Coast stuff early. And then you had your Central Time, and then your Mountain Time, and then your Pacific Time. You weren't up till midnight watching it. You could watch. You were well within your bedtime.
But like for us, like let's say even with basketball, typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the places I've been around, there's one day a week it's early, but maybe most of the time it's 8 o'clock or later on.
Yeah.
But let's say you do have one of those 6:00 early mornings with basketball in the summer on a Friday. Okay, if you're getting into the building at 5, waking up early, you could still watch part of that Thursday night. Like your life, you still have to wake up at 5, but all the other stuff that you get to watch, like that's why I've been advocating for it.
Yeah. The mountain time zone's the best. So
then the other thing I wrote down within the high performance world, because my first exposure to it, hearing about it was from Nick DeMarco when we worked together at Iowa. And then I lived it at Towson in 2018. And then having conversations with Bob Alejo, who's worked in it and has forgotten more about it than I will know, and I'm continuing to learn from. But he and I have talked about the word transdisciplinary versus interdisciplinary, meaning transdisciplinary is like, hey, we're all looking at the same problem at the same time. The PT, the athletic trainer, the strength coach, the sport coach. It's not like, within the interdisciplinary, he was saying it's more like a conveyor belt, like athletic trainer handles it until this point and hands it off to you. And you strength coach have nothing to say at the beginning and the AT has nothing to say later. and maybe I don't like if the words don't matter, but if we're all doing it where everybody has a little bit of a voice and an opinion, and yes, there is the one stakeholder who is the key decision maker in that phase, keep it that way. But I guess, what are your thoughts on that ability to have everybody have a voice? And even like the AT, like, hey, if people are healthy, they should be able to be like, okay, well, what about this drill? Or what about this thing that could help the guys run faster or whatever?
Yeah, and honestly, that's what I was used to. I was used to the conveyor belt style of like chain of command type of deal, right? Where, if somebody's returning from play, athletic training has them, and then okay, now they're good to go.
Team Builder is Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for online software for strength coaches. It does not matter what sector of strength and conditioning you work in, you want to get Team Builder because you will be able to program for your athletes, simply distribute the training to them, and make changes, modifications, whatever you need. I've been utilizing them since 2019 when I was back at Towson. I still use it in person at Goldfinch with all my remote clients throughout the country, and in person at the high school, Centennial High, right down the road when I was volunteering for them. You got to check out Team Builder in the link down below. The people that work for them are former strength and conditioning coaches, so they get it. They are able to help you with all of your needs. Again, reach out to your Team Builder rep and learn more about them in the link down below.
And so at Utah, we literally got together in a room, once a month or sooner if we needed to, and we discussed everybody. And there was definitely times where I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was going on with this guy, and vice versa. It's like I would bring things to the table where, sports psychology or nutrition, like, oh, I didn't realize, like, he didn't really like those types of foods, or, he was dealing with this or what have you. So it was, like you said, we were all just kind of collectively working towards the same goal. At the same time. Now, obviously, when we were doing the return to play, there are certain benchmarks we've got to hit before we can move on. Like that's still the same, but we were all on the same page together. Even with like sports science, we do all of our pre-testing in the summer, and so we've got all these numbers to refer back to. It's like, okay, so now he's good enough to jump on the force plates. Let's go back and look at this, and then they can do their analysis, and I'm not just staring at data trying to figure things out, right? They can actually give me some better intellectual guidance on where we need to go and what we need to do to reach the next benchmark. So I think it's obviously in my opinion, the best approach to things. It's just that's not always going to be your situation, right? Depending on where you are. Utah was unique in that way, where we had all those pieces and we had the infrastructure for all those pieces. Correct. We had multiple nutritionists. We had 3 full-time sports scientists. We had, I think we had 6 sports psychologists. So like everybody had just like strength and conditioning, everybody had their teams and worked with them. And then myself and the athletic trainer, we solely worked with men's basketball. So we were kind of the key, the head to the whole situation, or to the team, right? And then I had direct communication with Coach Smith. So it was that's kind of how the hierarchy went, but at the same time we're all working together to try to solve the same thing. So,
and I think there's something important for our listeners out there. Like, yeah, okay, maybe you don't have that situation, and we didn't only have one nutritionist. We had for each sport, we had one nutritionist for over 500 athletes. Right. But if we can start to align, this is the ideal, this is what's real, and then we can start to move the real closer to ideal, because this conversation wasn't happening 10 years ago and high schools weren't having this. Things are continuing to evolve. So the more that we can be the rising tide that raises all ships to show people what is possible, the better for everybody.
Right. Exactly.
The word that I wrote there too earlier was intimacy.
Yeah.
And how intimate you can get with basketball. Same thing, other people, if it's football only, you've got some baseballs only, some wrestlings only. When you're in that intimacy, what has been some of the biggest things that you learned when it first happened for you that was like, oh wow, I can do more of this, or I can't do this, because there actually are a buddy of mine, Christian Brown. I know he's listening to this right now. He's down at a junior college, Kapi'olin Community College, and that staff at that administration has started to dwindle his other team responsibilities so he can be more intimate with the other teams and getting to the ability to hire more staff. For somebody like Christian, who is in these roles where now you're going to start to go deeper with teams instead of just wide with so many, what were some of those biggest aha moments and pieces of advice that you would give them?
I think, I mean, with me, it was just the amount of time I had. You know, I wasn't going from sport to sport to sport on the floor, or I wasn't going from, you know, okay, this program ended, so now I got to start writing this program, and then I got to write this program for this team and this team and this team. It was, I was able to think longitudinally and kind of have a have a better, more specific plan as far as that goes. And then with the individual guys, like, okay, now if I have somebody dealing with, you know, not necessarily an injury, but maybe a deficiency or an asymmetry or something along those lines. Now we can use some of my like all the stuff I've tried to learn over my career. We can start taking that and go one on one and do some of those things. I mean, even now here, it's just like, okay, we play, you know, 8, maybe 9 guys, right? So now we've got all these other guys on the team that either need to develop so that they can play next year, or they need to develop so that they're ready to play at some point this year if something, you know, happened in terms of injury or maybe just within the rotation. So me being able to take them at different times, one on one or in small groups, or just spending extra time with them. Now I have that ability, where before I really didn't have that ability. I mean, I think back to when I was at South Dakota State, or even at Augustana. I mean, at South Dakota State, we get in at 4:30 in the morning, set up for the first football group, run football till 11 o'clock. At 11 o'clock, I'd go to class, come back, and then I'd have, you know, then you'd have softball and swimming and men's basketball, and then you try to eat somewhere in between there, and then maybe you go to your next class, you come back and you train yourself, and then you go to the library or you go to the lab, and you know what? It was just, there was never any time for that individual evaluation whatsoever. The same thing at Augustana. I mean, I had 5 sports at Augustana. We had 2 guys on staff. So it's like you were on the floor for most of the day. And then your time to program or think rationally about some of these other things, that had to happen at other points. So now I can do that anytime. And then now, but I can actually apply it and work with these guys one on one way more often, or even head things off that, like, maybe we start seeing some asymmetry or some sort of something different on the force plate, and you're watching guys trend certain directions throughout weeks or months or whatever that might be. Well, now you see those things, and you're more aware of those things, so you can kind of head that off or start asking questions, and you're in the one-on-one setting, so you know you have more time to talk about those things versus just running a full room all the time with that team or multiple teams in the room. I mean, there was several times at Augie, it was like, well, we have 8 racks. It's like, well, you get these 3 racks, and football's got these racks, and well, you need to watch the freshmen clean, but you also need to watch the soccer team finish that, you know. So it's just there's just a lot more going on, and the way it's organized now, the way I have it organized now, I can start to get a little bit more involved in those other pieces.
2 questions off of that. One is, and this stems from seeing Chat do things at Towson and understanding that world and how Amit would do things too. How do you respect the ability to go super individualized with a roster that's smaller and you can train 3 guys at a time, 4 guys at a time, maybe like you said, one-on-one? Where's that balance of giving them hyper individualized training, but then also still trying to keep that team training aspect of everybody being together? Sure, you might have different movements, but how do you balance that duality?
Yeah, I value team training above all else. Like I think that's our best environment. I mean, all summer long it'll be team, even in season. In season, for the most part, it's team, unless we have done like 2 groups, 2 smaller groups. So we did that at Utah as well. But I value team the most, because it's just, there's something to be said. Oop, my lights went out. There's something to be said about you know, just everybody being together, and then you know, like having some shared suffering, if you will, you know. And so I really enjoy that environment, and the guys enjoy that environment too. I think if you asked them, they would prefer that. But the individual piece, so like I break down, so we have our team groups, or our big groups, and then I break every guy down into individual deficiency group based from just joint by joint from the floor up, right? So I just look at we evaluate each spot and then try to figure out, okay, where's my deficiencies? We use force plates to do that, some other keys, and then also just talking to the player. It's like, okay, what have you dealt with in your career? What, what's nagging you, low back, ankle, whatnot. And so then from there, I make like just small little offshoot workouts that help with their deficiencies. And so then those are all done individually, and those are all done on the athlete's time. But it's nice for them to be like, hey, coach, I don't have anything from 10 to 11.
Hawken Dynamic is Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for force plates and for handheld dynamometers. Not only am I using it now in the private sector at Goldfinch, I was utilizing this software when I was back at Towson University. You're able to transport the plates because I've taken them from our private sector facility to our other locations, also been able to take it from our private in-person location to the high school down the road to do some testing with athletes right then and there. You're able to pair your true strength with the striking difference machine. The people at Hawken are fantastic. The technology is second to none. You have to learn more about Hawken Dynamic in the link down below.
Can I pop in the weight room and do my deficiency work? Absolutely. I'm free. I'm not training, volleyball. So yeah, get in here. Let's get that done. And so that's kind of where that's kind of morphed for me over the years.
Second question, that when you were talking about deficiencies and being on the force plates, and that was something that we were first balancing and working with at Iowa, and then I would apply at Towson. It's like, okay, how long of it is a trend versus, some planned overreaching or planned exhaustion during the season? Like, how long is too long to allow something to go on versus, it's almost like coaching too. Like, you see a bad rep of a squat, like, you don't have to let the athlete kind of be like, okay, that one didn't feel good, they fixed their second rep. Like, how do you, and again, anybody listening, I'm not asking for how do you, just from a 10,000 foot view, respect and approach the duality of letting the athletes go through some of that suffering and understanding versus like, okay, we've got to be the adult and step in and try to provide an intervention?
Yeah. And I'm not claiming to be a force plate specialist by any means. I mean, I pop on with Vol all the time, like, hey, what's this mean? And the same thing, I really lean on our sports science team at Utah. But when, like, in the off season, as I'm looking at those numbers and we're going through, like, as a strength coach, okay, we're training really hard. Like, these guys, we should be seeing a decrease in performance here. Like, that should happen. Yep. But you also know when you're starting to super compensate and you're coming up on a peaking period, or maybe you're coming up on a testing period, or whatever, maybe you're transitioning cycles, or whatever you're doing within your program, and you should see an improvement. So if I'm not seeing those improvements, or the guys are, especially in season, if the guys are staying, below 10% of their average for a longer period of time, and we're not recovering, then I've got to start asking questions. Okay, is it my programming, or what we're doing in practice, or is it the guy? Is it the athlete? Are they not sleeping well? They're not hydrating? Is nutrition an issue? So now you just got to kind of solve the puzzle, right? And there again, I mean, it's just me and 15 guys. Yeah, so I can do those things, right? I can look at this stuff every day and watch trends over however long, 14 days or a month or whatever I want to look at. Where before, I remember being at Augustana, my desk or my office was in the exercise science lab. So I just had like one of the little kid desks that you had before, right? And so it was just in the corner, and I was like, well, and I just got done with grad school and doing my thesis and doing all the testing. This is cool. So I've got metabolic carts and bod pods and all kinds of stuff. So I started doing some stuff with my teams. Well, I just saw data stack up on my desk, because like, it was just, I had all this information, but the time and the ability to apply it, I didn't have. So now I have that time and ability, and I can start to dive into those things.
Another I word for you is impactful. When you hear that word, what does it mean for you as a strength coach beyond wins, record, social media presence, whatever? But what does the word impactful mean, after we kind of talked about intimacy?
Well, I don't have a social media presence, so that's not.
But we live in a social media world, so
we do. I mean, I think just from an impact, from me personally, being impactful is being there for the athlete and being there for our coaching staff. I mean, I helping them reach their goals individually as athletes, and also the team and our coaching staff and reaching their goals, and maybe the coaches see certain things with certain guys. They have visions for these guys over a developmental period. What am I doing to impact that and impact those changes and improvements? I think that's what impactful is to me. And then obviously having a relationship with both groups, right? Having a relationship with the athlete, with the coaching staff. I've been really, really blessed to work for two head coaches that really value family and value relationships. I know that's not always the case. And then with our guys, I mean, when I run a very intense room, and we run intense workouts, and we train really hard, and I'm demanding, and I expect certain things each and every session. But at the same time, like, they know they can come talk to me, or we can have a conversation when we're doing these one-on-one things. We can sit and have a conversation that doesn't revolve around strength and conditioning or basketball, for that matter. So I think that's where the impactfulness comes.
That's the second, maybe third time I've heard you talk about the importance of family. And it's bringing me back to a conversation I had with Kenna Smoke Manisi, who's the assistant director at Army West Point. And she coined the phrase, and I don't know if she coined it from somebody else, but I continue to give her credit for it. There's no such thing as work-life balance. There's work-life integration. It's you are integrated. Like, you're a dad. We were talking off air about, your family moving, and like, the basketball team sees your family, and your family sees the basketball team. And that's how it was for me. That's what Kenna talked about. And I feel like the great strength coaches, it's that integration, not a balance, because it's kind of vertical integrated. Yes, there will be seasons in season where you're spending a little bit more time here versus at home, and vice versa, but you're the same person at work and at home. And that's why that word integration, work-life integration, really hit home for me. I don't know if that's the first time you've heard it, but where does your brain go when you hear that? And then how would you then explain it to, our hundreds and thousands of listeners out there that are trying to figure this out as strength coaches too?
Yeah. I mean, I'll admit, like, I didn't always have integration or balance whatsoever. I mean, I had been working at Augustana for, I don't know, maybe 6 months. And so my boss at the time, Coach Chambers, who actually played for Iowa, he was a linebacker at Iowa back in the 90s. I get in early and I leave late, pretty much every day. And I was on the floor a lot. I had a lot of teams, but I wanted to get, I was trying to get everything done in terms of programming, planning, trying to be more intimate with all my teams, basically, and at the time I was married but had no kids. And he grabbed me one day and he's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, what do you mean? He goes, "Well, you get here before me every day, you leave after me every day." And he goes, "Do you ever go home?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I go home." He goes, "But are you home enough?" And he goes, "Don't be here all the time." He's like, "If you can leave at 3, leave at 3. Okay, if you don't have to be in here till 7, don't be in here till 7, and go spend time with your wife. Like get out of here." And I kind of like stepped back and thought. I was like, "Well, yeah, that's what I should do." And so I wasn't great at it at first, but I got better and better and better. And then when I got to Utah State, and then Omaha, in Omaha, we were like trying to lift the program off the ground, I felt like. So they went from having like all part-time staff to full-time staff to not having a director to then promoting me to the director. So like that was a really big building process. Like, and then just having some organization within teams and coaches and how we train, and having some sort of semblance of like an actual program. That was new. Nutrition didn't exist. We started our own nutrition station, or fueling station. We worked with some people across campus who wrote grants, and we got a $20,000 grant to buy nutrition and build a nutrition station. So we did that, and then I was working with Learfield to get like trade out for supplements and that sort of thing through different supplement companies. And so we were doing that, just trying to build the program, right? And so I spent a lot of time working that way. But then when I got to Utah State, a lot of that stuff was already, that was all done. And like I don't bring work home. If I do, I do it early in the morning when my family's asleep, or and I don't stay up really that late, just probably because I can't, not because I don't want to, just because I can't. Uh, I go to bed, and so I just don't bring it home. So the one thing that Coach Chambers told me, he goes, you can be an All-American strength coach when you're here, but you need to be an All-American husband and dad and father when you go home. And I was like, okay, and so like really just changed my view, and like how I organize my day and that sort of thing.
Chris Doyle was really good about that at Iowa too. Like
Yeah,
he said, don't guard your desk. And he would have
yeah,
it where like we would have one person was responsible for the weight room that day. So you were first in, last out. There was conflicts. You knew it that day. But otherwise, if you got your job done and things were done, like he's saying, don't guard your desk. Powerlift is Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for exercise equipment. Made here in the USA, right down the road in the state of Iowa, Powerlift has the ability to customize whatever you need in your room, regardless of the sector of strength conditioning. If you need a massive, big room, they have the ability to help you with that. If you're confined with space and you need to get creative, their reps are able to help you get what you need done and being able to get any customizations that you or your organization want with your logo on the equipment. Click the link down below to learn more about Powerlift. And if you have any questions about them, please feel free to reach out to us. And like understanding like having a family. So, anybody listening to it, it is possible to still be really intense and really dialed in during those 8 hours is still a long time. And I know that if you're training a lot of different groups, like I've lived that life too, but if you can be hyper focused during your day, and Matt Aldred said this when he was on the podcast, like when it's time to work at work. And then when it's time to leave, it's time to leave. Like, let's not BS at work. Let's work when it's time to work.
yeah. When I was at Augustana pretty much everywhere except for when I transitioned to one team sport or one team, responsibility, like my time management skills were really good. They were just really good.
Yeah.
And I think back to, I talked to some guys in my circle, and we think back to like when we had like all these sports and all these responsibilities, and we kind of complain about time now. It's like, how did we do it back then? You almost forget like how like organized you have to be, to tackle all those things.
Amen. And so I don't know if a lot of people are aware of this, though. You won the Silver Waves Media Most Impactful Strength Coach in 2022. So we're, again, diving into this word impact. What did that, I'm assuming, we've never met outside of having some text message conversations, but you don't seem like the type of guy that's like, I do this for the awards. Like, no. But it's nice when, you do it for the kids and who you're working with, but it's nice to be recognized as somebody that's doing a good job. So how did that award, how did that go down? What were your thoughts as it all happened?
Honestly, I didn't even realize that. I didn't realize what it was exactly. I'm on this list of, most impactful strength coaches, and I was like, how do they decide who gets this? And that was my first thought. And I was like, not that I don't value the recognition. Like it's awesome. And not that I don't think that I do a good job. It's just, and it's just like, how is this voted on? And I did some research. It's like athletic directors and coaches, like basically put together this list. And I was like, well, I must be integrated in a way through our staff and through the universities that I've worked with, and had an impactful impact somewhere, not just on the weight room floor. Yeah. And I think that was, it wasn't not so much at Omaha, but at Utah State. Like I was on whatever they call the cabinet group, or like the administrators that communicate about where's the university going, what are we doing, how are we improving and growing and making the life for the athletes better, and making their experiences better, and so that was really good. I was on something very similar at Utah, but yeah, I think it's great, and I'm honored obviously to be on that list, but I think it's just a lot of that's impactful things that you're trying to do outside of the weight room as well, and kind of, help move things forward. So
we've talked a lot, not about like the actual X's and O's of strength conditioning, but now I want to dive into it, because looking at your bio and looking at your background, there's a lot of things that we are, in line with, and I am super excited to hear your 2 cents on. Let's start with the FRC stuff. Okay. I'm a huge fan, learned about it from a chiro that I work with at Towson. How did you learn about it? What are your ways of, practically using it with coaches? Like, how can it be done right? Because I've seen it done right, I've seen it done wrong. And I'd love to just hear your opinion on it all.
Yeah. So when I was, I worked alongside Dave Scholes at Utah State. Yeah. And so, Dave was the director of football, and Dave's still a great friend of mine. So that staff, before I had gotten there, had really started to get involved with FRC. They had taken, obviously the beginner course, and then kind of, branched off into more advanced stuff. Joey Burgles was doing a ton of that, kind of on his own, and the rest of the staff had either been certified or was in the process of getting certified. So it was really integrated into what they were doing on a day-to-day basis. And so then I got certified as well. And I really like it. I mean, the principles of it all, like we do cars every single day in our warm up. It's got to fit, right? It's got to fit in the grand scheme of things. So we do cars every single day, pails and rails. I do a lot of that stuff on an individual basis, working on deficiency, as well as like post game recovery sessions. So I'll break guys into minutes played, and I'll do a tactical priority with them as well. So then, after a game, if we're not off, so we're planning to practice that day, we're not going to come in and necessarily lift. So one way to get some stimulus, some neural drive, and also it fits really, really well, is to kind of break things down from mobility, recovery, pails, rails, cars, get that all integrated. And I teach it, I just teach it a little bit at a time. I mean, I had a professor in college say, "How do you eat an elephant?" And I smarted up and said, "You don't eat elephants; they're endangered species." but it's one bite at a time, right? So it's like, you gotta. If I tried to just bombard them with everything you learn in the course, they're not going to buy in. So just little bits and pieces of why this is important, what we're trying to accomplish with the cars, the pails, rails, the overall thought process between the neural drive and how much tension we're trying to develop. That seems to be pretty impactful. And then the guys also they can feel it too, right? It's always good when they can feel it. And so that's how I integrate it within everything we do. Like they tell you in the course, when you take the course, it's like, this is the golden ticket sort of thing. You've got to be able to master this before you can move on, sort of thing. And it's not that I don't agree with that. It's just that's really hard to pitch to a sport coach. Yeah. So for me to still be able to put pieces in and get benefit from a soft tissue standpoint or a joint integrity standpoint, as well as train hard and train fast and develop our guys that way, that's kind of been my best approach.
I love what you said there, and I want to just piggyback for our listeners out there. If you're trying to figure out where to do this, those bulletproofing days, low CNS lifting days, game day +1, +2, like the way I told my coaches and players this is it's yoga with science, right? It's not like, oh, we're holding this pose. No, we're going to try to get deep into that joint capsule. We're going to work on that strength at length or strength and shortened range of motion. And that's how we're going to be doing this for you. And this is why we're doing it. And like you said, you can get the athletes getting a sweat, feeling that difficultiness. And Lord forbid, if you get somebody to cramp, now you've got buy-in. They're like, oh, wait a minute, my muscles are actually working. Like if I'm doing this end range knee and they get the hamstring cramp, they're like, oh, wow, this is working type deal.
Yeah. And actually, when I was at Utah, I had a couple of guys with AFI, and we started really doing a ton of hip pails and rails, just all different positions. And they were in a significant amount of pain prior. And like they just started feeling better and better and better and better, to the point where they didn't even really notice it until they were, like really deep in a loaded squat. So like just those guys then are now your advocates, right?
Yes.
It's like, so now they're bought in, and thankfully those were some of my better players as well.
Right.
So now they're bought in those sessions, and then everybody sees, okay, these guys are bought in, I should probably be bought in, and it all kind of just snowballs.
Did you ever have to do because what I noticed I had to do to get buy-in at first was almost I had to lead it while doing it myself. Like
I do it. Yeah.
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 Yep.
I mean, I get down, I get down on the ground and
Yep.
I demo everything. There's certain things I have a few injuries that I've accrued over the years that I pick out the best guy. I'm like, hey, come here and show everybody this. But for the most part, I try to demo as much as I can. So
yeah, especially for
me
during camp, like that's how we would start. Like our upper body day, we started with all the upper body FRC stuff, or cars, pails, rails, whatever. And then on the ground, same thing. Like I'm going through it with them, and I'm like, listen to my voice and listen to my strain as I'm coaching you through this. Like this is when we've cranked that knob up to that 8, 9, 10. Like this is how much more intense it gets.
Yeah, I mean, in the summer, I'm soaked, like
so you're drenched
all the way through my shirt. And the first couple days, the guys are making fun of me. It's like, he works harder than we do, But yeah, I'm in there demoing, and I'm running around. I'm hands-on coaching, and it's an intense day. So
Olympic lifting, diving into that. So I have gone the full gambit on it, learned about the power complex from Jeff Jones, who now is actually back in the state of Iowa, is going to be working at UNI.
What's when you refer to the power complex, like what are you
the power complex was something that Jeff had first explained to me. It has now evolved into where you're breaking the clean, whether it's from the hang or from the floor, into its component parts. So from the hang position would be you do an RDL, right? And then if you're going to do it from the floor, you would do a clean grip deadlift. And the premise there was you're doing that to overload the hip with a heavier movement, because that's part of the reason why you're doing a clean or a hang clean. Then the next movement was be a loaded jump with some sort of feedback, if at all possible. So jumping on a jump mat, holding dumbbells, barbell, whatever you want to do, and then treating it a la Louis Simmons West Side Barbell. Create a 1RM for it, try to beat it the next week, change the movement, and now you're continuing to drive intent on a new movement. And then third would be the altitude landing, where that increases ground reaction forces on a catch, different than actually catching the Olympic lift. And being able to do so with your team sport athletes, because they don't have to compete and they don't have to get great technically at a clean. And that was why he did it. And I threw clean completely out. We got rid of it. My athletes that cleaned versus didn't, there was no statistically significant difference when I ran a paired t-test on their change score from jump height pre and post, or their acceleration pre or post. So I was like, screw it. We don't need to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Now I'm back somewhere in the middle where we utilize it. Where's the reality of it for strength coaches that are listening to this now?
So I'll admit this. Every off season, I fight this internal battle of Olympic lifts. And there's probably 4 or 5 guys that I talk to the most. And I always call them in May, and they're like, you want to talk about Olympic lifts, don't you? I go, yeah. Because it's just like, especially now with the transfer portal, and you're bringing in new guys constantly. At Utah, our last year, our entire team was new except for one. And then our first year, obviously everybody was new, and then everybody left, and then everybody was new again. And it wasn't until our third year we actually had some continuity. And then this is my first year at Iowa, and I feel like we're going to have a little bit more continuity, but you just never know. You never know. And it's just like, well, okay, so I'm bringing these guys in. I'm trying to teach them how to clean, snatch, and jerk. We've got a good progression, and it always works, and they can always learn there. And I learned all the Olympic lifts under Nate Moe at South Dakota State, and then Richard Borden at Utah State. Richard Borden was an international Olympic lifting coach, and he would actually. So in the summer, he would come in and he would coach us every day. He'd take us through a program and coach us every day. And then at the end of the summer, we'd compete against each other. And so I did that for 3 years at Utah State, and it was a blast, But just so I'm actually doing the Olympic lifts, and I'm actually getting coached by a high level coach. So those things that I've learned over those years, I feel really comfortable applying. It's just I always struggle with, okay, am I getting the value out of these movements that I should be getting, or that I think I should be getting, and do I have enough time to maximize that, like at the 80-20 rule, right? And so I struggle with it every year, but every year I end up going back and we're like, okay, we're doing them. And at the end of the summer, I always feel good about it. And so I still do them. We do them pretty much all summer, all fall, and then we'll do them basically until Christmas of the in season.
Vitruve is the trusted VBT source for Strength Coach Network, and I have been utilizing this for years at Goldfinch, and I'm going to continue to utilize it because the great price for the encoder, as well as the accuracy with the data. Whether I'm measuring average, peak, or any other metric, if I want to include range of motion, fatigue loss during the set, intra-set, whatever it is, I can trust Vitruve. And they are continuing to push the needle and continuing to educate coaches on best practices within the VBT world. Not only do they live in that VBT world, but now they've come out with their new hub. And if you want to learn more about the hub and how it can help you with all of your athletes that you are working with, as we are starting to do this at Goldfinch for our middle school all the way up to college athletes, check them out in the link down below.
And then I start to dial things back. So we'll move to more pulls, snatch grip, clean grip pulls from the floor. We do everything from the floor. I'll start putting some hang in there as well once we get in season. And then we'll do barbell complexes pretty much all season. Snatch grip and clean grip complexes. And then obviously loaded jumps and that sort of thing once we get in season. So I get away from the eccentric portion of receiving the bar, elbows, wrist pain, like that sort of thing. And then with guys that I've had a few guys in the past where it's like they just can't get it. We've tried all summer and they don't look good. We're not getting quite the benefit. I just move on. Either we go to pulls or we go to some sort of complex, not exactly the same power complex that you described, but we go to something else. So I'm still getting I'm getting the benefit of what we would see in the movement, but I'm also but I'm not wasting my time. Maybe they've only got 1 year left, right? And it's just not something we need to do. Or I've had some 7-footers that just really struggle with snatch, right? Or really struggle with jerk. They get low back pain. So we push press, or we do snatch pulls or dumbbell snatch instead, And so I just modify those things as I go through the year. And honestly, I changed the way I do our in-season programming. This would have been maybe my second year at Utah State. We went to more of a microdosing model where we're training 4 days a week, no matter what, 30-minute sessions. And then I just kind of, move things around the way it needs to be moved according to games, right? And once I switched to that, just the pulls and the complexes that we do in season carry over really well to the off season. Yeah. And so I didn't feel like I was starting over in the off season. And that was part of my dilemma too. It's like, well, we do all this work on Olympic lifts in the off season, and then we go in season, and then we lose it all, and we go back to the off season, and I kind of starting over. Once I switched to the microdosing model, once we got to the off season, everybody looked really good. Our techniques looked really good, and so now we can start adding weight and start pushing some maxes that way, and different power outputs as well. So I wasn't having to I always do a little bit of technique integration, but we could start pushing weight a little bit faster.
Yeah, and I didn't do a good job saying, we still snatched and jerked because I love that's a great way to get heavy weight overhead, right? Let's just call it what it is. You can, this is going to blaspheme so many people, but jerks or snatches is like a cheating way to get heavier weight overhead than a strict overhead press. Right. And so to actually get heavy weight overhead, I think it's great movement. The ability to rapidly decelerate something overhead, I think is awesome for shoulder health. like you said, my thing was always like the limited catch for certain athletes, even if they had a fused wrist. And it's like, hey, this complex, I liked it because I got better hip extension than because all we would used to do was high pulls, because that's what Frage and Doyle had programmed. And I was just like, okay, that's what you do with, somebody that can't catch a clean. You just high pull them. And you could still high pull them within the power complex. But like for me, doing the RDL or the clean grip deadlift with VBT to drive intent to move the bar really fast.
And well, and I don't, not that I don't find value in the high pull. I just don't, I always feel like the athletes find a way to cheat it. And so
they just drop under it instead of pulling it high.
And so it's like, am I really getting the benefit I want? No. So, we adjust it. Yeah.
And there's another school of thought out there, like the ability to rapidly decelerate the external load on your body, and like accepting, like there is something to that. But then there's also like, okay, well, you talk about people playing that many minutes in basketball, like they're getting an external contact all the time anyway. So is this really helping them? Is it not? I don't really know, versus the cumulative effect of a basketball season, especially for your bigs that are just continuing to grind and having that external load anyways.
Yeah. And we do a lot of partner, like med ball throws. Throughout the in season. So we're accepting, we're getting that external force that way. It's not the same, but we are doing some of that. Actually, a year ago, yeah, I think a year ago, just looking at force plate data, our eccentric rate of force development, or eccentric duration of or not eccentric duration, but eccentric rate of force development on the force plate throughout the season, I saw a steady decline. And but obviously I'm taking out Olympic lifts, right? And we never really had any like type of catastrophic injury or anything that I could relate to, like that, that being a deficiency or a reason why anything happened. There was nothing like that. Yeah. But I also didn't really want to find out if there was going to be. So the next year I go, okay, I need to start incorporating some more deceleration type stuff within the lift. And I do kind of how I break down my in season. We'll do all of our ground based, or like human movement, 3D maps, FRC cars, and that sort of stuff, like all at the beginning, just to kind of get going. And then I'll go into like a winning warm up, like Matt Winning, like how he does his stations and whatever. And I'll go into something similar to that, not necessarily to have some of it is for some hypertrophy and just some volume, but I started integrating into that some deceleration stuff. So we'll do like trap bar drops or barbell drops or like altitude drops off boxes. Yep. And then the next year, when I went back and looked at my eccentric metrics, they all improved. So just adding those little things in, even though you're not doing Olympic lifts, I'm able to get that stimulus and actually develop that stimulus throughout the year.
You teed up the next question about the Gray Institute 3D maps. I dove down again. Shout out to Chat for this. Like learned it from him in 2018, and have talked with Doug and trying to get him on the podcast as well. Where have you seen the applied functional science stuff done really well? Obviously with what you're doing, because if you're using it, you're doing it well. Like all of us, whatever we're doing, we should be doing it and thinking it's the best, because why would you be doing something if you don't think it's the best? How have you seen it applied well? Have you seen it applied poorly? Not naming any names, but just some qualities that strength coaches can try to avoid.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it applied poorly. I think kind of the origin of it. I was at Augustana, and I was in this men's Bible study, us and a bunch of guys, and we get together at 4 a.m. and we work out and then do a Bible study. And the guy that led it was a physical therapist, Steve Young, in Sioux Falls. And so Steve had a ton of background within the Gray Institute. So every day we were doing 3D maps, and we're doing core conversion, as part of our warm up, and going in through the lift, and I would help do the lifts, and we'd work out, and then then kind of circle up and get in the word and have just have some fellowship, and it was really, really good. But so I got a lot of that from Steve, and when I was at Northwestern, we were using FMS at Northwestern, so we were doing we were testing guys and then evaluating deficiencies and then building out programs based off of FMS scores. And so not that I it was great. It worked. FMS is a great tool, but I was like, I feel like the 3D maps piece gave me a little more value.
Yep.
And so that's why I got certified in that, and started taking those principles, and applying them again, same thing, into our warm-ups, into our mobility work, just human movements, just the series of what they had, core conversion. That series is great. You can add weight to that. It can almost be a workout within itself. So I'll do that on some of our recovery days just to kind of get our heart rates up and jumpstart that recovery process. So that's kind of how I use it, and where I use it and why I started it. Like I said, I wouldn't say I've ever seen it done poorly. I mean, the best I've seen it done was obviously in the gym at 4 a.m. So
how often are you using the word whopper jaw with your guys then?
Whopper jaw. Not very often. Not very often.
I said that to Doug. He's like, that word's probably been used too many times. My dad used to retire that word.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've seen it done really well, where it gets added in and sprinkled in within, like you said, in the warm up, and the idea of doing the matrix, where it's like, look, there's not always just this one perfect way to squat. Like, expose your body and your stimulus to the different ways, and then being able to pair it in with your accessory movements in your A and your B block, or kind of a heavier one within your C block, because you start getting and ripping these heavier dumbbells when you're doing your matrix, your pivot matrix, whatever it is. Like, it's not always just right rotational, it's opposite rotational, and just the ability to express and expose your body and your tissues to different loads, because applying the FRC principle of injury occurs where load increases, where the load through the tissue exceeds the capacity. Dasher Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for timing gates for your athletes. Whether you're trying to run A-cells, curve, flies, change in direction with the Pro Agility, the 505, modified 505, whatever you want to do, get valid and reliable setup with your Dasher. I had the black, the blue, and now we have the silver at Goldfinch. We're completely moving over from the blues to just only having the silvers. I only test my athletes on the silvers because it has helped me save so much time, whether I'm going from Ankeny over to Nevada or Ankeny over to Huxley, whatever I got to do. I save so much time, and I want you to be able to save so much time with your setup, because we know that time is precious as strength coaches. Now, not only are you going to be able to save time, but you're going to be able to save money with this great product, and you have a valid and reliable product that has run through countless different articles, as you continue to see online being published with the accuracy of this information. So, if you want to learn more about Dasher, click the link down below to be able to go to their website and learn more about them. So now you're just layering stress on the body.
Correct. Yeah. My guys really groan when I start going into the squat, push-up, complex, matrix in the warm-up, when we start doing all the hand and foot positions. But again, like you said, it's a great way. It's a great way to like just bulletproof those tissues, right? And to work them in different areas that honestly you get contorted and twist and when you're playing, and to be able to have the robustness in those different ranges of motion, I think is really valuable. So
you talked about Northwestern. That was going to be on here, and Ox is listening to this. Talk about your time there, because I don't think as many people, unless you're in the state of Iowa, especially if you're in the northwest corner of it, understand how really, really good of a program, for strength coaches and GAs, but what he's doing out there.
Yeah, Ox is phenomenal. I mean, we played together for 2 years. I was O-lineman, he was tailback. So, I mean, I've got a ton of respect for him, not only as a person, but as a practitioner. I spoke at his clinic. He puts on a great clinic. So if you're listening and you're in the area and you want a good strength clinic to go to, I mean, it's really good. He always does it in May. And, but no, like my time there was great. Met my wife there. I played 4 years football, and I was on the track team as well as a thrower. And I mean, tons of values that I use today professionally, as well as in my life as a husband and a father. It's faith-based. It's a faith-based community and education, and it was really, really good. That, I mean, honestly, that's where strength and conditioning kind of started for me, I guess. it really started in my high school weight room. We had BFS, and I was like, I got to make this better, right? And so I just started like tooling around with the BFS program, and like this is pretty cool, And then I actually went to Iowa football camp, and Coach Doyle talked to us, and I was like, well, this is a job. I could be a strength coach.
Right.
So I go to Northwestern, and they're really good with getting you to experience a lot of different things, and so I looked at physical therapy and athletic training, but I just kept falling back to strength and conditioning. And then I did an internship with Jake Anderson at Central College over the summer. Him and Dobson were with Doyle as well, and internship with him. And I came back to school, and our football coach, we didn't have a strength coach, so our football coaches were just handing us workouts that they reprint. They've probably been reprinting them for the last 20 years, honestly. And I was like, can I do our program? Can I do our strength program? I've done these internships, and I've read these books, and I think this is what I want to do. Can I get this experience? And the football coach was like, yeah, take it. We don't that's great. We don't have to do this here. And so it was myself and two other guys, all wanted to be strength coaches. And so we kind of the three of us kind of got together. It's like, okay, you do the warm up. Let's talk about the lift. And it's like, we're going to do FMS. And so we'll do FMS. And then you do the breakdowns on how we want to break guys into groups and work at efficiencies and those sorts of things. And we kind of just did it together, and went through a season and an off season. And then these other sports were like, well, can you do that for us? And so now I'm working with volleyball, and I'm working with baseball, and I'm working with track, and I'm doing all that as like a junior and senior in college.
That's awesome.
And so that's kind of how it all started for me. And then obviously Ox took it to a whole nother level, and those the professors and everybody at Northwestern took it to another level. They built that great facility.
Yeah.
They have the internship program. Like, I'll take any intern from Northwestern, because I know that they know their stuff, and it's really grown into a great situation there. So,
But it's so good because the practitioners, like you said, they get their hand, like there's too many coaches leaving with a graduate degree that have never actually coached, and that just can't be the case.
Yeah, and I'll say my career path isn't the most direct by any means. I mean, I started in football, and now I'm doing basketball.
Yeah.
Like, it's not direct at all. But I will say, like, my internships were all very, very practical. It was all very, very hands-on, and I did them at every level. I was at the high school level. I was at small college level. I interned at South Dakota State before I became a GA. So, and then at South Dakota State, there was three of us. There was two full-time and two GAs. So it wasn't like we had 21 sports. It wasn't like we had all this huge staff to everybody has their own teams. We all had to kind of work together and do everything. Same thing in Augustana. It was just two of us. We had 18 sports. We had to do everything. And so all my experiences have always been really like trial by fire, more than, hey, this is how we do it. You do it that way. You copy that, right? I remember talking to one of our GAs at Utah State, and I was like, take me through what you're doing for tennis. And so he's taking me through, and I'm asking questions, and he's like, I don't know. That's how we do it. And I was like, okay, but why are you doing, like, why? And it's like, well, it's just this time of year. That's what we come. And then this comes next, and this comes next. And I was like, but why? Like, I always, everywhere I've been, I've always had this continuing education budget or opportunity where it's like, okay, I can buy these books or take these courses. And I just felt like I always needed to continue to educate myself as much as possible. So I had this arsenal of rationale and reasoning and ability to adapt to any situation. And so, I mean, that's something that I really, really value over my career path.
Now so you talked about, Northwestern, we talked about smaller schools. The question that I have for you is about recruiting and not you going and doing the recruiting. But when you look at that Iowa roster and you look at, like you said, okay, guys that have come with coach and from schools that maybe they tried to go to Iowa's, but they were never good enough, but now they're on that roster. And so I'm saying this to coaches that are maybe either working with high school athletes that are not getting as toutily recruited, or the strength coach that are working at the junior colleges or those other colleges where they're working with athletes that might feel slighted because they didn't think they were good enough. But now you're working with an entire crew of guys that, maybe 3 years ago they got passed over, but now they're at that spot. What's it like working with the mentality of those athletes now where, they're in a spot like that, or they have the chip on their shoulder, that type of environment?
It's really refreshing. It's very refreshing. I like the kids my favorite kids to coach are the kids that have some sort of chip, or they've been doubted at some point, and they're trying to reach their goals. And also understand that no matter what level you're at, like the kids you're coaching, that might be their goal. Their goal might have been to play at Northwestern College, and they're trying to achieve their dream, right? So don't I mean, like, obviously the Power 5 or Power 4 level is awesome. Like it's great with resources and everything that you have, and just the pageantry of game day and that sort of thing. But understand that when I was coaching at Augustana, Northwestern, South Dakota State, Omaha, like those kids, a lot of those kids, they wanted to play there, right? They wanted, this is where they wanted to be. And they have a lot of pride in being there. And so it's like, you don't.
Player Data is Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for GPS technology, and it's simple. The price you cannot beat, and the validity and accuracy of their technology is second to none. The price is outstanding. Go ahead and reach out to them to learn more about the pricing specific to you and however many units you're going to get. And then the validity. Player Data has been tested and run through FIFA's validation process for FIFA to then be utilizing Player Data technology. FIFA, we all know that name. They would not be utilizing a product that cannot live up to the competition and cannot be able to provide real, live, and accurate data. Player Data is able to do this. Not only do they have great software and hardware, but I know that the customer service is fantastic because I have worked with these individuals before. Click the link down below to learn more about Player Data.
Don't overshadow that with well, it's not Power 5 or it's not Power 4 or whatever. Like, I mean, this still has a ton of value for them. But back to your question, I really enjoy coaching those guys because they take coaching, they take criticism, they're trying to get better. They listen. So those guys are really, really fun to coach. Those athletes are really, really fun to coach.
As you're working with these guys, let's stick with this a little bit with basketball and the group of guys that you're working with. One of your guys plays almost the entire game right now in game, like not as big of a deal when you're in season, not big deal, but like, okay, has the work capacity, acute to chronic work ratios we're going to talk about as strength coaches. However, before you get to game one or scrimmages where there is time off, like where's that fine line between the group of coaches that say you don't need to do any speed work versus coaches where maybe they're only doing long, slow work and not doing any speed work? Because I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle, especially when you're working with somebody that has that number of high minutes.
Yeah. I mean, Bennett, because you're talking about Bennett Sturz. Yeah. So Bennett's special. I mean, Bennett's one of one. He's an absolute warrior. He's tougher than nails. Like he's that, what I was just explaining with, the guy that has your chip on their shoulder, the guy that's been doubted, like he went from D2 to being a draft pick, or being on draft boards. Yeah. So
lottery pick, from what I've heard.
Yeah. So for a guy like him, like his mentality is different. And I haven't coached a lot of guys like Bennett. So for Bennett to play 40 minutes, like I said, there's something to him, even in our first conditioning sessions of the summer, just blowing guys away, and I don't know how long he'd been off, but it didn't look like he'd been off at all, and so like for me, from a conditioning and a speed and agility or acceleration, top end speed training, we sprint every day of the summer, and then I build conditioning from the very first week till we start 20 hours. We condition all the way through. Now it's not. I mean, I'm not out there just destroying them in every conditioning session. There obviously is a scientific principle and method to what we're doing, and I build slow, but we condition all summer and all fall. So I want the guys to be in pretty good shape to start 20 hours of practice,
Right.
because I don't want the coaches to be like, we can't get what we want done in practice because we aren't in shape. And I don't want the guys to get hurt because they're not in shape.
Amen.
So we've got to be in shape. And I integrate that too within the style of training we do in the weight room. I mean, we move. I mean, if you came to a session, we run from station to station. When we're at that station, we do that exercise correctly, and we do it heavy heavy in regards to whatever we're doing. And we're trying to build strength and build power, but at the same time, our tempo is pretty high. We get a lot done in a short period of time. I had a guy that transferred out of Utah. I won't say where he transferred to. But I met up with him again, and we were just kind of talking about training. And he's just like, he goes, we got more done in a 30-minute in-season session with you than what we do in an entire week here. It's just like the tempo that we train and the efficiency at which we train is pretty high. So it's geared that way. But again, I want to make sure that the guys are ready to practice. And then the coaches from there, once we start 20 hours, the coaches start, do their conditioning. So Coach Mack, Coach Smith, the guys I've worked with the last two spots, they integrate that in within the practice, whether it's a competition, losers run, or whatever, or even at the end of practice, what are we doing for conditioning? And then and I just track it on Connexon, and we build out our weeks and build out our practices that way. So yeah, we've got a plan for all that.
Within your training sessions, we didn't talk about the RPR within the warm-up.
Oh yeah,
I had been exposed to it, learned it when I was at Iowa. Big fan, used it at Towson. I didn't use it with every person right away because I'm a little, I don't know if I'd say leery, but like, okay, high school athletes, like when is too early? When is it like, okay, there is still just the benefit to maybe some static stretching with young people at first, foam rolling, right? And then applying the FRC principles before diving into RPR. So in your opinion, for how long you've done things, when is too early? When is too late to be, and how to use it the right way?
I mean, back to what I was saying. It's got to fit in what you're doing. I've used it. I've used it to where I only did it on individuals, or I've also done it where I've taught the team and they've done it to themselves, and we start the lift or the warm up with RPR. Yep. I use Matt Van Dyke's glute layering also to pair with that as well, just to kind of drive home adaptation.
Yep.
And I still do glute layering. I haven't done any RPR yet at Iowa. We just it hasn't fit into the grand scheme of things quite yet. Just with how I wanted sessions to roll, what we needed to accomplish first, kind of coaches' goals and what they wanted to see out of sessions. So we haven't done it yet. I've done it a little bit individually, working with some guys with like just some different areas of tightness, or some like kind of nagging pain where it's like, okay, let's try to clear a couple things here, using level 2, and then kind of drive home some of the zone 1, zone 2 of RPR. So I haven't used it a ton here, but I do value it. I really do. I think as long as the athletes buy in, again, back to what we were saying earlier, I always show them the rotation, and I always do the karate chop with the ab, because it's like those always work, and they're always a little bit deficient there. So they see an immediate change, and then they're like, whoa, like it was magic. And so I always do that first so that they can kind of see, and I give us a little bit of background on why we're doing it and where it came from and that sort of thing before I start teaching it. At Utah State, I'd say that's where I was the most integrated. We would do it almost every day. We're playing at Wyoming. They're at 7,000 feet, and we're in a timeout, and the guys are doing breathing sites, in a timeout. I didn't tell them to, they're just doing it. And so I think that's where I had it the most buy-in and the most integration. We did it at Utah. We did it at Utah as well. A lot more individual, but I haven't done it yet here. That's something that's probably going to come down the line here this spring. But yeah.
With let's dive into nutrition stuff. Your bachelor's, master's background. How do you view your role in nutrition guidance? How you how much was it like, okay, back in the day, and maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but at the smaller schools, you're the strength coach and the nutritionist versus now you have somebody that you can work with and lean on with Kira, like that duality.
Yeah, I mean, again, thankful for my small college experience where, I've built the fueling stations. I've done all the supplementation. We've done the food logs and we've done the individual consults, and I've got guys sending me pictures of their food, and, and we're doing those types of evaluations because there wasn't anybody else to do those things. Right. And to me, nutrition's our X factor. Like if we have that dialed in and we have the guys bought into that, the changes we make from training are going to be exponentially better. Right. And everybody should agree with that. So that's kind of, that's kind of my background within my education and my experience at all my stops. Now at Utah, we had a full-time nutritionist that did all the individual consults with the guys, was constantly checking in with guys. I would do body weight checks, obviously throughout the week. And then, she would help with, and, what they're eating at training table, what they should eat, should not eat. If we had any type of food allergies, like those types of things, she would also help with all of our pre-game, post-game meals, nutrition on the road, snacks, fueling station, all that. So I was more hands off at Utah. And then we come here and we've got two nutritionists versus having the whole gamut of infrastructure that we had at Utah. So, our nutritionists here Kira's doing education in the summer. We're doing team educations, individual educations if we need to get that far. But then I'm taking on some of that role too with, okay, here's supplementation. This is what we're doing with supplementation. This is why we're doing this. Let's do food logs. Okay, let's see how you eat over a weekend versus how you eat during the week. What do we need to change? And, checking in with guys and then kind of giving them extra, different ideas like, hey, I'm having trouble sleeping. Okay, maybe we should add some magnesium into, before you go to bed, or, what are you eating on a daily basis? Maybe that's, causing some of your inflammation or your inability to recover. So like, so I'm doing a little bit more of that now than what I was doing at Utah, but more out of necessity in that regard, just because our staff is so thin.
And that's usually what happens in basketball too. When you look around, because of the intimacy that happens with basketball, like 9 times out of 10, that's the sport where the strength coach does more of it.
Yeah. And I still lean on them too with a lot of stuff, especially with the education piece in the summer. It's nice for them to see it's nice for our guys to see a full blown presentation on like, okay, versus me just, sitting down and having a conversation with them. So
how's life lifting for you as a strength coach? Because as I kind of sent over to you, like a lot of strength coaches, some of them only lift and don't coach anybody. Some people coach and they never actually lift and apply the principles themselves. And I think, again, it's important to do both. But I think as strength coaches, it is very valuable. And those that are not training and doing something, yes, you have to experiment on stuff with yourself before you apply it to the athletes. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I still train. I wouldn't say I train as hard as I used to train by any means. And I'd be lying if I didn't say I have a few more aches and pains than what I had when I was in my 20s. But yeah, I still train. I train pretty hard. I will run through our programs as I write them, just to like, okay, do I like this? Does this flow well? How hard is this really, sort of thing? But obviously there's times where I get busy and my training falls off just like everybody else. And then I do experiment. I try to pull, especially when I moved into the basketball only world, I was like, okay, so what are some of these basketball gurus out there? Like, what are they doing? Like is it all just for show? Is it all for Instagram show or social media show? Or is there some substance to this? And there are some guys out there that have some really good substance. And I've taken some of their programs and I've done them myself. I'm like, oh, I really like this. This will fit in here. This will fit in there. Some plyo progression stuff. I try to still jump a lot and move a lot. So some of those pieces, I'm like, oh, I really like how this works into my overall progression of things, and I'll add it in and do that kind of stuff.
How about big picture philosophy? If somebody, a young basketball strength coach is listening to this and they're listening to your journey, or even not just basketball, what would you want them to take away from your life and your experiences?
I mean, probably just be adaptable. Be adaptable. Like every situation is going to be a little different. Every team's going to be a little different. And so your ability to get the best out of that situation or get the best out of that team or that athlete, I mean that's ultimately it's on you. So be adaptable and build your arsenal of knowledge and education and work really, really hard and try to get yourself to that level so you can adapt to any situation. My journey, like I said earlier, my journey is my career journey isn't linear by any means. And I didn't make a ton of money to start out with, didn't have benefits even, but I think those first couple jobs I had, what I did have was I had a continuing education budget. And so I was able to, like I said, buy books and do courses and learn different things and just educate myself in the way other people were doing things. And at some point in time, everything I've learned, I've been able to apply somewhere, maybe not all at the same time by any means, but I think different programming styles or periodization styles or like all the mobility activation, injury prevention stuff that I've tried to learn. That's all I've always been able to apply it somewhere. I've always had a circumstance where it's been valuable to have. So be adaptable, work really hard, and enjoy the process.
Last two questions here. You talked about the family. You talked about your faith life before. Any young strength coach that maybe similar situations like you and I, like, hey, working all the time because you didn't have a family. How do you now have those two kind of pillars as the core of who you are and then able to make you a better coach?
Yeah, I think with that too, like I said, I've been very fortunate to have worked for the last two coaches I've worked for. I mean, even Coach Hansen at Omaha, like they were family oriented people. They understood and valued not only our staff was a family, but obviously your family is part of the staff sort of mindset. So like my kids love coming to the weight room. Like after every game, they come to every game. After every game, we go to the weight room, and they run around and have a good time. Like like for example, over here this Christmas break, like my 8-year-old, she doesn't have school, but my wife works. My other two go to daycare, so she comes in and comes in the weight room with me, and she works out and does her deal, and I show her a few things, and so I think just like you said before, it's a work-life integration, not necessarily a balance, and that's exactly what it is. Like I just every part of what I am outside of work is also integrated into work, and if I don't need to bring it home, I don't bring it home. So,
last question: what is one thing that people don't know about you that you think people would benefit from knowing, the things that you want somebody to know about you?
Oh, that's always the toughest question. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not like, I'm not hiding anything by any means, but like, there's not a ton about me that I think that like really stands out. It's like, oh yeah, you should know this or not know this. I don't know. I mean, I guess I wasn't always in basketball. Like, I'm at the highest level of basketball, but like this isn't where I started at all. And but like every experience that I've had throughout my career has helped me be successful at this level doing basketball. So I mean, if that's your end goal, like just keep working for it, because it's you'll get there eventually. It just takes a little bit of time. I think I was just really fortunate to be able to identify opportunities and take opportunities and capitalize upon them as I went through. So yeah, it'll all work out. I guess I mean my hometown is 2 words: what cheer. And like if you I think it'll trend every once in a while, like weirdest town names in Iowa. So I guess if you guys want to know that, about 600 people in a Casey's. That's about what exists there. So
Your story about working at the highest level sounds a lot like Buddy Morris. When he was on the show, he talked, he's like, Justin, I didn't dream, or it wasn't like, my life's work is I have to work in the NFL. Like it just,
yeah,
it happened. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I mean, and honestly, if you had asked me in my younger years, maybe I would have said like I want to be a Power 5 football strength coach. I might have said that, but I think there was a point in time in there where I was like, well, I really like the small college life. I like the development, you
Yeah.
know, and I like this. I remember getting to Omaha, and I was there for, I mean, I hadn't been there very long, a couple months. My wife was still living in Sioux Falls. We didn't have any kids yet. And I was like, I really like this level. I really like this level. Feel like we could be here a long time, you know? But things work funny, you know, and it just, opportunity arose. Coach Smith he was in South Dakota, and I was at Omaha. We were in the same league, but we didn't know each other. But I admired how he coached whenever we played against them. I was like, I think that guy would be really cool to work for, you know. And he goes to Utah State, and then like a month later, the strength job opens at Utah State, just random. And so that guy had taken another job after he had been hired. So it opened, and I applied. I applied cold. I had no connection to him whatsoever. I applied, and then I got an interview, and you know, it kind of just went from there. I mean, it was honestly pretty similar to here. Like I didn't know Coach Mack, but I knew people who knew Coach Mack, and so it was just I had enough connection to kind of get my foot in the door, and you know, and then it all just kind of worked. And now I'm back home around my family, my immediate family, and you know, living back in Iowa. So it's really cool.
Amen. Yeah. Like you said, God's timing is,
Yeah,
we
no,
make our plans, and it's like, hey,
yeah.
that.
That's what I've told everybody. I mean, I grew up a Hawkeye, and it's just like my wife and I had this conversation a couple years ago. It's like we've got a bigger family. Our kids are getting older. They're missing out on some things, you know, back home. So what does that look like to get back home? And it was like I said, the whole situation was almost truly divine, and how it all just kind of fell into place. So it's you know, it's really been cool. So
Well, I appreciate you taking some time to educate me and our listeners out there. So Logan, very much appreciated.
yeah, absolutely.
Have a great rest of your day, man.
Yep, you too.